Hey everybody, welcome back to another episode of the Music Den. I'm your host Armando Venditti. Hoping you guys are having a fantastic day. In this episode, I'm going to be doing another album ranking. But before I do that, I wanted to show you something that came in the mail yesterday. Okay, I'm going to pull it up here. This is the new release from Mr. Jeff Martin of the Tea Party, The Seven Deadly Sins. I did a review of this album a couple of weeks back, and I want to thank you because it's getting decent numbers in terms of views. This is Jeff Martin, The Seven Deadly Sins. This is released on his own label. It was released independently. It's on his website, jeffmartin.com. So please go to jeffmartin.com to get a copy of this. This is basically 7 tracks, a concept album, 7 songs based on the 7 deadly sins. Okay. Jeff Martin plays all the instruments with the exception of the drums. He arranged and produced the album. He produces all of his own material. That was the front cover. I will quickly show you the CD inlay. There we go. And I'll quickly show you the back cover. I wanted to show you this because I did mention that it was coming in the mail. It came from Australia. So there you go. There's the back cover. Sorry with that for the hands, guys. Yeah, and to be honest with you, when I tried to pull the CD out, I didn't have to worry about ripping the cover. The CD came out of the inlay flap very easily. And that is how a CD should be put together when you're doing a digipack. It is a flat finish. It's not a glossy finish. The album, in terms of the music, as I said in my review, it is very Middle Eastern influenced. A lot of Middle Eastern drums, percussion, not heavy on the drums in terms of like a rock style of playing, but a lot of use of sitar and Middle Eastern acoustic instruments. And it's a fantastic album. The songs, all with the exception of one, range in around the 4-minute plus mark. The one song that doesn't, it clocks in at track 2, I believe, clocks in at 5 minutes and 17 seconds. It is a fantastic album. It is a very emotional album. And Jeff Martin, in a recent interview, has said that when the Tea Party reunite to record another album, which I'm hoping they do soon, will be, as he put it, quote unquote, pissing on their own territory, meaning that he wants them to return to using more Middle Eastern influence type of instruments and that kind of a sound. So hopefully that'll happen soon. Again, please go to jeffmartin.com to get this album. It is amazing. I paid, well, it's listed at $29.99 Australian, which when I pre-ordered it worked out to be $41.47 Canadian. The vinyl version of it is more expensive. It's $79.99 Australian dollars. So please get the vinyl, get the CD. Let me know what you think down below, either on this video or the video for the album review, and let me know what you think. Now, moving on to the ranking of the albums portion of the show. Okay, this is going to be interesting. Now, there are artists that have catalogs that have like 20 albums in their catalog, 15, 10. This artist only has 3. So it's going to be a bit of a short album ranking. And only 3, but these 3 albums made a hell of an impact on music, modern rock music, and music from the 70s when the albums came out. The albums came out in the 60s, but the influence is still felt today. The artist I'm talking about is one Jimi Hendrix, and I'm going to be focusing on the albums he released with the Jimi Hendrix Experience. Now, Jimi Hendrix was born James Marshall Hendrix on November 27th, 1942. Unfortunately, he passed away September 18th, 1970, a day before my birthday, coincidentally. He was also known as Johnny Allen Hendrix. He's considered to be the most influential rock guitar player of the 20th century, and for good reason. He started out before forming the Experience in London, played backup for Little Richard. He also served time in the military. He was discovered by Chas Chandler of the Animals, brought to England, was signed up to a management deal with Chas Chandler. They put together a band, a trio consisting of Noel Redding on bass, backing vocals, and Mitch Mitchell on drums and backing vocals. From what I read, the main purpose of putting the band together was to focus mainly on Jimi Hendrix's unique guitar style. And he did have one. There's no way around that. Between 1967 and 1968, they released 3 albums, which at that time period, to release 3 albums in 2 years was quite a feat. And really, I don't think was heard of up to that point. He was quite prolific. I do feel that he had more to say musically, but didn't have enough time to put it down on vinyl. So, and it's also got to be said, I'm going to get this out of the way too, that he didn't think of himself as much of as a vocalist or even a guitarist. There are stories of him being on a flight with Terry Kaff of Chicago, and him saying to Terry Kaff that he thought that Terry was a better guitar player than he was. And also, Jimi Hendrix was a major fan of Steve Winwood, okay, and Miles Davis. There were rumors that he wanted to form a group with Steve Winwood at one point, and also with Miles Davis. They had basically pretty much discussed doing that, but it never came to fruition. So again, for the purpose of this episode, I'm going to be focusing on the 3 albums that were released under the moniker of the Jimi Hendrix Experience. Okay. And for this first one, I'm going to be focusing on the UK track listing of the album that I'm going to be talking about. Coming in on number 3 is the debut from 1967, Are You Experienced? Now, as you can tell from the album cover image that I showed, there were 2 covers shot for this album. Hendrix was not pleased with the UK release, released under Stax Track Records. He was signed to Track Records in the UK, Polydor in Europe, Barclay in France, and Reprise in North America. What you saw in that image there were the album covers for the UK and the North American release. He wanted the North American album cover to have more of a psychedelic look to it, which it does. All purple and etc. So fantastic. This album, when it was released, reached number 15 in Canada, number 5 in the US, and number 2 in the UK. It's a good album. It's a really good album. Songs like Foxy Lady, let's start off the album. What I like about this album is, as far back as his debut release, Hendrix was using a lot of experimentation, use of panning from left to right, right to left channels on the mix in terms of guitars, using a lot of I call it, he had a very thick, textured guitar sound to me. He used a lot of distortion. He also liked to use a lot of I call it, I guess, overdriven or overblown sound on his amps, like really loud sound, like really, thick sound. And even in concert, his stage presence was just amazing. But he also kept himself at a distance from his fans. He had a very enigmatic persona. But getting back to the album, other songs on the album besides Foxy Later, Fire, which is like, fast-paced tempo track, good chorus, Red House, which is a blues track, good blues. He was a fantastic blues guitar player. Fantastic. Though I should also say, I'll mention a story after this album. One of my favorite tracks on the album is Third Stone from the Sun. Instrumental, clocks in at 6 minutes, 47 seconds. Again, instrumental, very experimental, with use of panning of guitars, use of distortion on the guitar, and also the title track, which is on the UK version, is the last track on the album, Are You Experienced? 11 tracks on this album. Fantastic. I remember from the 1980s, there was a video that was released on Warner Brothers, through Warner Music, I should say, because Reprise was distributed through Warner Music, of Are You Experienced, the single. And what I like about the track is, first of all, the video showed a lot of, obviously, archival concert footage. And what I like about the track is the use of the backwards masking effect on the beginning of the track, and the use of, he used a lot of feedback, and he would use feedback to play melody. I mean, and if you notice when he played his guitar upside down, first of all, and it was upside down. And he would play what you would think would be the bottom two strings, or the bottom strings of the guitar, but obviously they were the top strings, just played upside down. And he had a way of playing using that fretboard like you would not believe. I mean, unreal. And again, just because this album is number 3 on the album ranking doesn't mean that I like it any less. I just feel that the next 2 albums were more polished in terms of sound, in terms of sonically, they're better sounding albums. So that's number 3. Coming in at number 2 is Axis, Bold as Love. Released in December 1967 in the UK, and in January of 1968 in the US. This album reached number 3 in the US and number 5 in the UK. Now, from the first album to the second album, sonically, it's a better sounding album, whether it's to do with improvement of recording equipment. Obviously, we have to do with that somewhat, but also I think he knew what he wanted to do in the studio, how he wanted the albums to sound. All the trademarks are there in terms of using feedback and using distortion pedals and using studio tricks and things of that nature in terms of recording. But I think he just turned it up a notch. I mean, the album starts off with with the minute and change track EXP, which basically sounds like it's like a spoken interlude between Mitch Mitchell and Hendrix, and how he changes the pitch, he lowers and raises the pitch of their voices. and it basically sounds like an alien coming to Earth, and discovering Earth. Other songs of note on the album are Up from the Skies, great, great track. Spanish Castle Magic, which was a single. If six was nine, sorry. Another fantastic song. You got me floating. Another fantastic piece of work featuring such backing vocalists as Roy Wood, who would go on to form Electric Light Orchestra and Wizard, and also Graham Nash of Crosby, Stills, Nash and Young and Crosby, Stills and Nash. Just a great, a great track. Again, this album, 13 tracks, not very long in terms of song running times, like 3 minutes here, 2 minutes there, not very long. But a lot of music on one album. And again, sonically, it just sounds like a better produced album. And I think at this point, Jimi Hendrix knew how he wanted the records to sound and what he wanted to do. I do think, again, that he had a lot of music he wanted to put out. I just don't think he had enough time to do it. Unfortunately, his time ran out, which is quite sad. So coming in at number 1 is Electric Ladyland. Now, as you can tell from that image I just put up, there were 2 album covers issued for this album. There's the European version of the nude models, and then there's the other reissued album cover of him just doing a solo, and if you noticed from that picture also that I showed, Jimi Hendrix did not like this album cover at all. He hated it. He loved women, he revered women, he respected women, and this cover is done, from my understanding, it was done without his permission. And the image of him biting that album cover, he hated the album. This album clocks in at I believe it's a long album, like 72 minutes. It's quite long, it's quite experimental. It just seemed to me that this album, I should say, that he went to town. He threw everything he could on the recording canvas, as I call it, and whatever stuck, he used. And luckily, what did stick to the canvas, bloody, worked. No way around that. Okay? This album, upon release, was number 1 in Canada and the US, and number 6 in the UK. So this album was a hit across the board. Okay? There are people, I would imagine today, that would love to have an album like Electric Ladyland. Okay? The experimentation of it, it starts off with "And the Gods Made Love," with the thunder and stuff like that. Going into Crosstown Traffic, and it's said that to get the effect that they wanted on Crosstown Traffic, they took a comb and took a piece of cellophane and just blew into the comb to give that effect on the mic. Other songs of note, Voodoo Chow, which clocks in like 14 minutes and change. And I do believe it does feature Steve Winwood on organ on this album. Burning of the Midnight Lamp, fantastic work. There's a song, starts off side 2, written by Noel Redding, called Little Miss Strange, that he was just noodling in the studio one night, come up with this idea, because this album was taking long to record. So he had some time, so Noel Redding went in the studio and did this demo. Jimi Hendrix heard it, loved the track, said, "We gotta put this on the album." whether it was a nod to Noel Redding or whether he just loved the album. You know what? He believed in this track enough that he wanted it on the album, and that's good enough for me. It's a good little melodic rocker. And the cover of All Along the Watchtower by Bob Dylan, it's got to be said that Hendrix loved Dylan. He idolized Dylan. He thought that Dylan was a poet in terms of his songwriting and his lyrics. He just loved what he did musically, so he wanted to put that on the album. If you can, there is a 50th anniversary edition of Electric Ladyland. It's a box set. You have the album. You also have the studio outtakes. There is a live album, a live concert that they did September 14th, 1968 or 69, I believe it's 68, that they did. That's included on the set. There's also a DVD or Blu-ray, I should say, sorry, of the classic album series, which talks about the recording and the history of Electric Ladyland. So I got myself a copy of that. I paid something like $141, ridiculous price, but you know what? It is worth it. And if you can get your hands on that, it is well worth it. There are also pictures, and it comes in like in a coffee table book format, and there are pictures and there are essays on the recording of this album. And for me, this album was Jimi Hendrix and the Jimi Hendrix Experience at their best. Also, other musicians appearing on this album. And again, it's got to be said, this was the album where the band started to fall apart. Jimi Hendrix would do things like play bass. If he felt that Noel Redding wasn't doing what he was supposed to be doing on the bass, or couldn't achieve what Hendrix heard in his head sonically, then he would play bass. Other musicians on this album include Buddy Miles on drums, and there's use of on the track "Have You Been to Electric Ladyland?" Have you ever been to Electric Ladyland? The use of Cissy Houston on background vocals, along with basically choir on that track. This album, from 1967's As You Experienced to Electric Ladyland, it just seems in a year that he just grew by leaps and bounds, songwriting wise, production, just overall, the overall package of Jimi Hendrix was fully developed by this point. And maybe the reason why there was the disbandment of the Experience was that he felt that there was only so much that they could do as a band at that point. So, you know what? Please listen to these albums. Put your comments again down below, down there. Let me know what you think. Do you like Jimi Hendrix? Do you not like Jimi Hendrix? Do you think he was overrated? Do you think he was underrated? Please let me know what you think, and put your comments down below, and leave your comments, and also click like and subscribe and hit the notification bell to keep yourselves on top of any new content that I've got coming up. I will be doing a show with Bill Schuster, one of two. We're going to be doing, we talked about this yesterday. We had a very long video chat, and I love talking to Bill. He's a fantastic person. I'm hoping that we can meet someday, actually. And we're going to be doing a video ranking the albums of Steely Dan. I spent all day yesterday listening to all 9 Steely Dan albums. It was a long afternoon, believe me. And we're also going to be doing at some point the album ranking of Pink Floyd. I've got my list together. I hope he does too. That's going to be filmed probably tomorrow, so it's going to be aired probably Saturday or Sunday. I'm going to be doing an album discussion of Harder Than Hell from Kiss with Mr. Peter Kent. And he came up with another idea for a show that we're going to discuss. So please tune in, and hopefully you guys appreciate and like what I'm doing with the content. So please, that's it for now. Have a good day. Look after yourselves and one another, and I'll see you soon. Bye for now.